you've probably scrolled through social media and kind of looked through a lot of different influencers and talking about their habits, what they do in the mornings or in the evenings and before they go to bed. And the question comes, do you really need to take an ice bath at 5 a.m. or meditate on top of a mountain or any of those habits that you see on social media? There's so many habits out there and things that a lot of people do that work for them, and sometimes we try to implement them without realizing what we're trying to do. Do you really need to be part of the 5 a.m. club, for example? Or do you need to do 50 push-ups the second you wake up? I'll admit that I've played around with most of these habits that we've seen from a lot of the people that we maybe look up to, and I want to kind of maybe filter through a few of them to see or tell you what worked for me and why they worked for me. So stay tuned to this video, and I'm going to talk about the habits that I've borrowed from people that actually worked for me.
Go to concerts with your great-grandchildren. That's amazing.
Fear itself is a tremendously powerful lever. And when I say a lever, I mean a chemical lever.
It's not that they don't get heart attacks. They just don't get them when they're 65.
That a regular gratitude practice can enhance many, many aspects of our physical and mental health.
I mean, there is simply no better elixir for metabolic health than being active.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have to admit that for the longest time that I've been searching for the best life hacks and maybe shortcuts to optimize my life. Bottom line is, as with most things that I say, it depends on each person and what their goals are. I know it's annoying, but that's the reality of most of the things that we do. Thanks to our friends at Gen Z and every self-help book out there, habits and productivity hacks are the new trendy topics to talk about. But amidst this habit hysteria, we've lost sight of what actually is doable and honestly what actually works. Spoiler, we don't need to mimic Elon Musk to see changes. Now, you need to understand something. Habits and most of other things are very similar to workout programs. You can't just jump into a competitive weightlifting program as a beginner and expect that you won't hurt yourself. That program is designed for advanced athletes, and you jumping in as a beginner really does affect what the outcome is going to be. See, most people try to emulate successful people in the hopes of maybe figuring out what the secret of their success is. See, the thing is, it doesn't really work that way because their circumstances is very different to yours. And keep in mind, what works for them might not necessarily work for you, and it might not be the reason why they're finding success per se. In this video, I'm not going to dig into how to create a sustainable habit because I've talked about that in other videos, and I've actually dissected the Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I go into a lot more detail. So if you want to understand a bit more about that, then watch over here the video to go into more detail about creating habits and how to make sure you can sustain them. So let me share a secret with you. It's all about picking what resonates with you specifically. Forget about the 5 a.m. club if you're not a morning person. It doesn't really make sense that you're trying to force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. because you think that's what's going to give you success. Having said that, I'm going to share the 6 habits that have really helped me become a lot more productive in my everyday life. So the first one is probably no surprise to most of you, but it's sleep, sleep, sleep. Spoken about this so many times, and I've even used the analogy of saying that sleep is not a health pillar, it is the foundation that the other pillars are built on. So it turns out that watching movies till 2 a.m. was not something that benefited me. So when I started to prioritize sleep, it was actually a game changer. I have enough videos on the importance of this, so I'm not gonna go into more details, but honestly, the one thing that I think most people can benefit, or the lowest hanging fruit, is working on a sleep habit and sticking to that every single day. Number 2, move your body. Movement is so critical to better everything, better mood, better sleep, and it becomes like a cycle. It's not just for people that want to go to the gym, but it's something that's critical to human life. Even if it's a little bit, it goes a long way. Even small walks that you take outside, getting sunlight, it makes a huge difference in your mood, in your ability to sleep or get to sleep, wake up a bit refreshed. It makes a huge difference on that level. As silly as it might sound, but even dancing or doing shadow boxing in your living room will make a big difference to how you feel. So even if I can't get into the gym, I'll always find some way to stay active. Either going for a walk or doing some other type of activities in terms of a couple of minutes just to get my focus back, but I'll always try to find some type of movement that will bring up my heart rate a bit and get me to kind of move my body and get the blood flowing. Just doing even 5 minutes of any activity does change your mental state, and it does lead to better sleep. You see how everything is linked together? The third one that I want to talk about is caffeine and sunlight. So caffeine and sunlight, I put them in together because they go hand in hand on. The first thing I would say is waiting about 90 minutes before you have your first caffeine hit. And the reason for this is that you want your cortisol levels to go up naturally without the use of caffeine. And once it does that, it triggers the start of when you should actually go to bed. Add to that you get sunlight the first thing that you wake up, not staring directly at the sun, but getting exposed to sun the first thing makes a big difference, because that as well starts the whole cycle of when you should be going to sleep. And if you're able to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time, then you'll probably or more likely get better quality sleep throughout the night. And that in turn leads to having more energy the next day, and it becomes a beautiful cycle. So that protocol is something I got from Uncle Huberman, and it really did change a lot in terms of my sleep quality and the energy that I have during the day. Something funny that I've recently learned about Huberman is that there's a term called Huberman husband or Huberman husband. It's mostly on TikTok, but it's a growing group that idolize Huberman and try to follow everything he says to the T, including how he dresses. If you're interested in that, go search TikTok for Huberman's husbands or Huberman husband. The fourth habit that has really helped me to become more productive is planning my day. So usually the beginning of the week, I'll write down a to-do list of things that I need to get out of the way. And that helps me kind of do a brain dump of everything that is a priority, and it's on paper so I don't have to think about it. It gives my day a structure when I do that, and a lot of peace of mind that I'm not going to forget anything. So that starts off with maybe going through my calendar at the beginning of the week, and I make sure that I understand what that week's going to look like and what's a priority for me in that week, and I start to look at that in terms of my to-do list. So once I start to cross things off of my to-do list, it starts to build up a lot of momentum to go through that week and become even more productive during the week once I get that momentum going. The fifth one I want to talk about is something called time boxing tasks. So what does that mean? Focusing on one task at a time. It might sound silly, but it actually makes a huge difference. A lot of people sit there and try to multitask a lot of things and actually end up not achieving anything off of those tasks. Now, I was a mess when it came to this. I would have maybe 3 or 4 things on at the same time, and then I would get distracted from that and then distracted from that same distraction, and it becomes a vicious cycle of not being able to achieve anything. And then you become overwhelmed and you don't achieve anything, so you become less productive. So once I decided to have a to-do list and I prioritize each item, I became super productive and actually finished tasks rather than sitting there and doing 3 or 4 tasks and not actually finishing any of them. This kind of reminds me of in the days when Napster and LimeWire were around, and yes, I'm old, and if you were around at that time, you would understand what I'm saying. You would have like 20 things downloading at the same time, and it took so much time to get through all of them. And I realized that doing 2 or 3 at the same time was a lot more productive. Number 6, and this is the last one, is finding my Zen. What does that mean? So this is probably one of the hardest tasks or one of the hardest habits that I've faced to actually make it stick. And I've tried a lot of approaches to this and a lot of apps, but nothing really has resonated with me. What I do want to say about this is that when it does stick, or when I do stay consistent for a while, I can see the differences in a big way. I'm no expert in this at all, and there's a lot of ways to get to the same point. But what I'm trying to get to is that if you're able to create this as part of your daily routine, it does make a huge difference in trying to kind of reset the brain and try to relax and deal with the stresses that will come at you throughout the week. To sum it all up, habits don't have to be monumental to be life-changing. It's about making small shifts that fit your life. So take what resonates, tweak as needed, and watch as things start to develop over time, and you just add layers to those habits. And as usual, and as most of you don't do it anyway, don't hit that like button, don't share your thoughts or your own game-changing habit in the comments, and definitely forget to subscribe for more real talk on living better. Remember, it's your journey and your rules. So find what works for you and leave the rest behind.